This past year has been one of the most emotionally difficult times that I've ever gone through, but has led me to having the most amount of personal power that I've ever experienced inside of my life. I've been able to let go and shed huge fears, some fears that I didn't even know were there. And what I want to do in this episode is share that journey with you, with hopefully leaving you with inspiration to explore some of this in your own life. So if that sounds interesting, well, keep on listening. Hi, I'm Brandon Lucero, and you're about to experience the new way to thrive in business, entrepreneurship, and life by leaning into who you are, what you love, and standing up for what you want to create. Get ready, because this is where we go against the grain, say no to outdated society norms, and we say yes to change in order to create a happier, more fulfilled world. Welcome to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. Today we're talking about stepping into the unknown. Basically, what I'm going to be talking about inside of this episode is just my journey over the last year. I know when you talk to pretty much everyone, there's been like huge amounts of change and shedding and growth that's been happening because of everything that's going on in the world. And for me, I've learned a lot of lessons over this last year. I mean, probably the last, 5 years of my journey. This last year, I've learned more. Well, yeah, I would say I've learned more, but the depth of what I'm learning has gone deeper than I ever have before. And I would say I've learned things that have impacted my life more in this last year than the last 5 combined. And I want to take you through through what I've learned, and I just kind of want to share my lessons with you. I am a big believer that, and by the way, I'm not done going through some of these things. Like, I'm in the middle of going through a lot of these as well. I am a big believer that when you share stories inside of your brand or a podcast or inside of content, you should really be sharing stories that you've already gone through and have learned lessons from, so that you can teach someone something versus just kind of explaining what you're going through now, because that could generate sympathy or the opposite effect of what you want. However, I am going to kind of go against my rules a little bit and talk about some things that we are going through right now, because I want to talk about how I'm actually navigating those. So let's start with the first part of this. And over this past year, there's been so much growth, but when I dial down the growth that I've been experiencing, what it has been is actually a loss of attachments. It's been a shedding of attachments. Yes, it's been a shedding of identities. Yes, it's been a shedding of who I was. Yes, I've not the same person I was a year ago. But what it was a shedding of attachments. And I was attached to a lot of things that I was unaware that I was attached to. And the way that I look at attachment, I view attachment as being attachment is being tied to a specific dynamic. And if that dynamic is threatened, then suffering occurs and control starts to take over. And here's what I mean by this. And so I kind of give just an example I think that would relate to a lot of people. Like, some of us have big attachments to our significant others, where there's a certain dynamic, or any relationship, really. We have some sort of attachment to a relationship. And we're attached really to the dynamic of that relationship. Things like how frequently we see someone, what the roles are inside of that. And the longer you are in a relationship, and I don't mean relationship just with your significant other. When I say relationship, I mean friend, best friends, employees. It could be your significant other. It could be your kids. It could be family members. But there's some kind of dynamic that is formed the longer you're in a relationship. And attachment basically means that you're so used to that dynamic or the way things are that if that changes, then there's some kind of internal suffering that goes on. And that change could be something like you don't see them as much, or maybe you go through a breakup or a friend breakup or something. But the reason why those are so painful is because you have some sort of attachment to that. And what most people do is, when they go through that suffering phase, is they try to micromanage or control the scenario to move the dynamic back to where it was. And there have been more than I would like to have dealt with. There have been more of these occurrences happening inside of my life over the last year, where I've been aware of different attachments that I've had to different things in my life without even recognizing it. And most of you know that I do work with a shaman, Don Javier, who also Jim Thornton worked with, Catherine Sinkina, James Wedmore, a lot of my peers. I've been working with him for 5 or 6 years, and he always says I'm a black mirror. I reflect back to you the things that you don't see. And boy, has he really churned up the black mirrorness of what he's been doing, because I've been able to see so many different things. And I want to talk about some of those different attachments that I've had to get rid of. Obviously one is changing the dynamic inside of even my marriage and with my kids and all of this stuff. And that was really hard because I didn't realize I had an attachment to. I mean, I was aware of attachment to my kids. I think that one's damn near impossible to to get rid of. But I've been with my wife for 20 something years, and there were certain dynamics that have formed, and I was very attached to my wife in the way that these dynamics were playing out. And those dynamics started to shift and change. And a lot of the reasons why they started to shift and change is because she's been going through her own personal development journey for a really long time. And I've been going through mine. And as we've gone through our growth, you have two individuals that are growing and changing. And I've always believed that if you don't grow together, then you grow apart. And so it's very, I don't know if difficult's the right word, but it was very hard to go through a lot of these changes in dynamic. And to give you guys some specifics, because you might be asking, well, I don't understand what you mean by dynamic. One of the things is my wife has gone on a big health journey because she has some autoimmune things come up. And so things had to change in how she was operating. So like, for example, where I may have been her first or number one priority, or number two to the kids priority inside of our household, she now became the number one priority. And that was a dynamic that we had, and we didn't even recognize it. Had you told me, does your wife prioritize you over herself? I would have told you no. But then all of a sudden becoming aware of the fact that she would prioritize me and the business even over her own health was like, oh my God, I never even recognized that before. But then when we start to change that dynamic, it literally shifts the relationship. And I started to realize I was so attached to the way things were in the relationship that I have so much internal suffering right now. And I was in like fight or flight every single day. And I was for a really long period of time. And there's more instances like that coming up over and over and over again. And I started to realize, wow, I had so many different attachments to how this relationship was. And where we are now is like, we are two individuals that are our own individual people, where she is 100% who she is. I am 100% who I am. And we choose every day to come together. And we're very aware now and careful to make sure that we're not forming any unhealthy dynamics or attachments inside of the relationship. And I can't tell you how freeing and beautiful it's been to see the relationship grow and to go to new depths of love that I've never even knew existed. And this brings me to the next piece of this, is that I think most people get confused with attachment, and they say when you're not attached to something, it means you don't love. And it's not true at all. I believe that when you are not attached to certain things, you can love on even more deep levels because there's no fear attached to it. And so part of the big attachment that I had to get rid of when it came to, a lot of my relationships is I was afraid of losing those relationships. I was so attached to it because they literally became part of my identity that if I ever, lost my wife, whether it be divorce or death or whatever, there would have been a lot of pain and suffering. If I would have lost, a friend or had a friend break up, there would have been a lot of, pain and suffering attached to that because of these attachments I had. Even some of my employees, like I was afraid of losing some of my employees because I was too attached to them and their role inside of the company. And so this year, what I've had to go through is this massive internal awareness of these attachments I had. And the number one way that I determined whether or not I had an attachment to something was if I had a fear of losing something. If I had a fear of losing something, it meant that I was attached to it. And what I've had to do over this last year is face those, address them, and get rid of that attachment. And I can right now honestly tell you, I'm not afraid of losing any employee on my team. I know that I will be okay. I know the business will be okay. Do I want to lose anyone on my team? No, I love every single one of them. And I think every single one of them plays such a vital role inside of my company. But do I fear and worry about losing them? No, I don't. Do I care about them? Yes. Do I love them? Yes. Do I want to make it very difficult for them to leave? Yes. Trying to lost track of my thoughts there. Do I want them to leave? No, I don't want them to leave. Am I afraid of them leaving? Absolutely not. And what that does is it gives me so much more of my power back, because every decision I make now is not a decision out of fear. It's a decision out of power. Am I afraid of, one big one is like kids. I think I have not shed that attachment yet, but I can say there's all the relationships inside of my life, friends, significant others, whatever. I am not afraid of losing those as much as I was a year ago. There's still, obviously, there's a process I have to go through, but what I'm recognizing is I'm much more in my own power because I have become aware of these attachments and I have been shedding them and I've been removing fear of losing them. When you don't have a fear of losing things in your life, you become so much more freed and powerful. It's like a big weight off of your shoulder. You make clearer decisions. You make more powerful decisions, but it is an effing hard process to go through. But if you can go through it and you can come out the other side, you're left with insane amounts of power. And I've been able to see this in my personal life over the last year. I've been able to see this inside the business. There's less micromanaging from me. There's more of making decisions of what I think is going to be right for the business instead of catering to employees, which has been a big lesson for me. I remember when I first hired employees, I was so afraid of things like getting sued or getting them to like me or making them happy. And of course, those are all things that I want. Like, of course, I want my employees to like me. Of course, I want them to be happy. But at the end of the day, I have to make decisions that are going to be right for the company as well. And I can tell you right now, I have no fear of making those decisions because I lost a lot of the attachments that I had that I didn't even know that I had. Another big attachment that I had to lose was my living situation. And I've grown up and lived only in California. And my wife and I had made the decision to move out of California and to Arizona. And I had to lose the attachments. I was afraid to leave California. What if I don't like it? What if I am not accepted? What if I miss this place? And instead, what I had to do is lose those attachments and free myself and this huge stripping of how things should be done. And I had to step into a place of power. And what we ended up doing was selling our house. And our house should be sold in a couple days. We close in a couple days. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it or anything, but it will be closed in a couple days. And we don't know where we're going to live. I have no idea. At this moment in time, as I record this podcast, my house will be sold in 3 days. We are doing a lease back for 60 days. I don't know the town I want to live in. I don't know. We don't have a house lined up. I don't know if we're going to buy or if we're going to rent. You have no idea where we're going other than that we're going to Arizona. And this would have freaked Brandon, old version Brandon out. A year ago, this would have freaked me out. Right now, I have zero fear because I know that it will be okay. I know that it will work out. And I know at the end of the day, we can just rent an RV and travel around until we find a place to go. In fact, that might be something that we do. Now, in losing all of these attachments, it really had me and forced me to strip down and become aware of how I think things should go. And I think we've been indoctrinated and we've been told how to think. We've been told what is normal, what you should do and shouldn't do for so long. And to be quite honest with you, I'm so sick and tired of being told what to do and my subconscious telling me what is normal and what is not normal. So some of the things that have come up with this move and some of the things that have come up with selling our house and not knowing where we're going to go is it forced my wife and I to really look at what's really important. What do we really want? And we started to realize, do we want our kids in the current education system? We've never even thought about it critically. Do we want them in this education system? What are the flaws in this education system? And I think that the world is changing so much. And a lot of these old things like the current education system, college, all that stuff haven't changed, that they need to change. And we're starting to look at this and going, is this really how we want to bring up our kids? We've literally lost attachments to how our kids are educated, how we want to raise our family, where we want to raise our family. And it's just this most freeing experience that I've ever had inside of my entire life. And yes, we have moments of anxiety and moments of fear and moments of stress, but we also have the highest amount of moments of just not giving an F and truly living our life the way that we want. And I've always thought I've done a good job of that, but now I'm experiencing it on so many different levels. We're at the point of do we even need to buy a house? Maybe we just buy 10 different rental properties and we homeschool our kids and we just go travel the world and don't have a house for the time being. Or maybe we do load up in an RV and we go travel for 3 months because you built a business that can be run from a computer. Why don't we take advantage of that and go travel the United States for 3 months and don't need a house? We start looking at possibility. And here's a couple of the ways that this has brought more power into our life is that so many people are so controlled by other people and other things that we have been not controlled by really anything. And a couple examples of how this played out. I was kind of reluctant to share this story because I don't know why actually. I was a little reluctant to share it, but basically since we've gone through this process, my wife and I have been having to go to Arizona a lot, back and forth. So we've been going to Arizona. We've been leaving the kids with babysitters or we've been taking them with us, which means the kids have been missing out on school. And the school sent us a letter and was like, hey, your kids have been missing a lot of school. We need you to recognize this and sign this contract and saying that they're not going to miss school and that you acknowledge that they have missed this amount of school. And so we looked up the rules of the laws of how much school a kid can actually miss. And we're not even close to missing it. We started to realize the school is trying to control us. They legally can't kick our kids out of the system. And what it comes down to is they get paid when kids show up. So they just want more money. So they're trying to scare us to get us to have our kids come back to school. And we just told them no. Said, no, we're not signing that. And yes, we are taking our kids out. And yes, they will be coming back to this school. We maintained our power. We didn't run around. We weren't bouncing left and right based off what the school wanted us to do. We weren't stressed. We weren't anxious. We're just kind of like, yeah, no, we're not going to do that. Obviously we're respectful. We're not mean towards them, but we're like, yeah, we're not going to do that. A year ago, we would have been freaking out. Oh my God, we need to sign this thing. We need to worry. We can't do this anymore. And we would have let that school control us. We're not doing that anymore. We know what we can do and what we can't do, and we know what we want. And then we're not even scared if they did kick our kids out of school. Great, kick us kids out of school. We'll send them to a new school, or we're going to homeschool them. And you know what? We're actually moving to Arizona, so we don't really care if you kick us out. So we're just going to go do what we want to do. And really what it comes down to, and why I'm sharing all this with you, is when we can find attachments, we can do the inner work to release these attachments. What we start to do is live a life with less fear and more power. And your fear will steal power from you. And a part of the way to do this is just stripping down of beliefs that you have, things that you think are normal, things that you think are right, things that you think are the way they're supposed to be, recognizing those and then asking yourself, did you come up with the decision that this was normal and right? Inside our program, New Generation Mastery, we have an exercise that takes you through this process. And I have people go through, a way to look at their marketing strategy they're using right now and to get them to think critically about their marketing strategy. And there's a series of questions, but one of the last questions is the marketing strategy that you currently used. Have you ever asked, is this the best marketing strategy for me and my business? And if the answer is no, at what moment, pin back the exact moment that you took on the belief that this marketing strategy was the right thing for you to do. And ask yourself, did it come from you or someone else? And if it didn't come from you, that's a perfect example of a lack of critical thinking on your part. And it's fine. We can't critically think about everything. There's a lot of things going on in my life that I don't think critically about. We all have it. But what I would recommend to you guys is to look at things that are going on in your life that you have fear around and ask yourself, do I have fear because I think this is the right way of doing something? And then ask yourself, was I the person that came up with the conclusion that that was the right way, that that is the normal way, that that is the standard? If not, then you really need to ask yourself, do I want to keep operating as if that's the right way, as if that's the only way, if that's the standard, if that's the best way? I can tell you right now, if that right way, that standard way, the way everyone else is doing it, is causing fear or pain in your life, then you might want to think critically about it and make a decision to not do it anymore. Again, maybe you do that, maybe you don't. You got to make the decision of what's best for you. But we've had to go through that, and that's what this last year has been for me, is a massive shedding of attachment, well, awareness of attachments, and then needing to shed them. We've let go of this need that we need to be homeowners, that we need to live in California. We let go of this idea that our kids need to be in traditional schools and educations. We let go of this idea that we need to be locked down in one place. I've let go of the fear of an employee quitting or leaving or whatever. I've let go of the fear and attachment I had to the dynamic of my relationship with my spouse and even the relationship with my kids, and honestly, even the relationship with my parents and the relationship with my friends. I've let go of all of those things. And it's hard and it is scary and it's not easy. I mean, it's probably one of the most emotionally difficult things that I've ever gone through in my entire life. But there was one thing that Don Javier has repeated to me over the last 5 years, which I never really understood on the level that I do now, which is that everything will be okay. And living in the unknown, and that's what we've done, is we just stepped into the unknown full force this year on levels that I never have before. But knowing no matter what happens in my life, that everything will always be okay. And I look back at my life and all the hardest moments of my life in the last 38 years, I've gone through some stuff. Things like being in debt, living with my in-laws, my business not working out, employees leaving, friendships lost. You know, I've been through a lot. But I look at my life now and I'm okay. I'm actually more than okay. I'm powerful. I'm happy. I'm internally free. And when I look back at my life, I think one of the hardest moments for me was being $40,000 in debt, not telling my wife and feeling like I was in it alone. That was really, really hard. And I look back at that hardest moment and I look at where I am today and realize I am more than okay. And so anytime I'm going through a hard time now, I look at myself in the future and go, he will be okay as well. Even if future Brandon is homeless, living on a couch by himself in a friend's house or something like that, or in a car or in a van, he'll be okay. That's fine. I'm not attached to millions of dollars or big launches or a successful business or a house. Do I want those things? Yes. Would I invite those things to stay in my life? Of course. Am I attached to it and am I afraid of losing them? No. Am I afraid of losing my house? No. Am I afraid of losing my friends, losing employees, losing my business? No, I'm not. I've lost the attachment to those things. I'm operating much more powerfully. And my internal state is more peaceful, in harmony, and powerful than it ever has. And if you've been listening to the podcast or you've seen or went through our last launch, we did a live launch and I did 3 days of workshops, you can tell there's a difference in the way that I showed up, presented, the way that I owned who I was and the authenticity that I had. I wasn't afraid of offending people. I wasn't afraid of losing money. I wasn't afraid of people not liking me. And that's because of everything I've gone over the last years. I've just let go of so many attachments I had where I got myself to a place of I'm not afraid of losing anything. And my internal state and peace and freedom is more important than anything. My business could fall apart and I could be living under a bridge and I will be happy because I know that I will be okay. And that experience is something that I want to give to you guys, that I want you guys to work towards as well, because it will reflect in your business. It will reflect in how you show up for people. It will reflect in how successful you are and how successful you become. There's one more thing that Dawn has always told me, and I'm just going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact words around this, but it's something along the lines of about being a warrior. And being a warrior is really about how well you can maintain, well, let me put it this way. It's not whether or not you get through really difficult times. And I'm putting this in my own words, not his. It's not about whether or not you get through difficult times. It's about how much of your internal state was peaceful and powerful during those times. That's what really makes a warrior. It's not, can you take on the biggest amount of suffering and hold on to, like, be the strongest person who doesn't show emotion and hold on and all that internal stuff. And yeah, I powered through it. No, it's who gets through it and has maintained control and composure and internal happiness and power during it the most. Who's been able to lose the attachments so that they could move through things powerfully. That's what being a warrior is. And that's what I've had to do over this last year. So I don't know what my journey entails. We'll have to keep you guys in the loop on the podcast. I don't know what town we're going to live in. I don't know if we're going to buy a house. I don't know what we're doing, to be honest with you. I have no idea what the next 6 months are going to look like. I don't know if we're going to homeschool our kids. I don't know if we're going to put our kids into school. I don't know if we're going to rent. I don't know what town we're going to move to. I just don't know. I don't even know how we're going to do the move. I don't know if we're going to have to hire movers and put things in the storage. I don't know. We'll figure it out. And no matter what happens, we will be okay. So this episode is called Stepping into the Unknown. At least that's what the theme that I wanted to bring to you guys. And I hope sharing this experience was helpful and insightful for you on certain things that you might have attachment to in your life, and hopefully give you the inspiration and motivation to start losing those attachments yourself. So that's all I have for you guys. If you enjoyed this episode, please let us know. You can go ahead and share your biggest breakthrough aha on Instagram and recommend this podcast episode to your friends and tag us. Let me know. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes, leave us a review. I love reading the reviews and I'm so grateful every time we get one. So take care, everyone. I will see you on the next episode. Hey guys, thank you so much for checking out another episode of the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, go below, hit the subscribe button, and make sure you click on that bell icon and get notified every time we drop a new episode. Now, if you're looking for the show notes, we have them linked underneath this video, as well as our social media handles and some links to free training and offers that we drop from time to time to help you guys even further. So go check those out if you're interested, and thank you so much for tuning in to the New Generation Entrepreneur Podcast.